I think that you have to start with non-essential services. I think that you have to start with, first we have to look at employees. As Amanda mentioned earlier, a huge portion of our budget is taken up in salaries and benefits. In the past, there have been suggestions of getting rid of some of those employees, and they were met with great disdain and distaste and truly some nastiness at City Hall. We have to look at employees. They are the biggest part of the budget. We also have to look at things that we don't have to have right now. We bought the Hargett property. I believe that it was important to do that. I think it is going to provide economic development on that side of town. But I don't think that it needs to be developed immediately. I think that we can hold off on that for a couple of years while we finish Monocacy Boulevard and get the traffic straight for people to be able to get around and through the city easier. Again, I do think police are the most important issue. Safety of our citizens should not be compromised under any condition.
Move on to the next question. Next question goes to Carol Krim. It concerns traffic.
With Fort Detrick expecting over 1,400 new jobs in the next few years, the new and proposed annexations, and expected city population growth, what will be the effects on traffic? And what do you propose to do to address the traffic situation?
I could not have asked for a better question. We all know we have public safety concerns up on Route 15 north of the city. And what I've learned recently is that there is an access road that has been designed by the State Highway Administration that is 0.2 of a mile north of Hayward Road. Now what we have to do is we have to get funding for that road. And I've been encouraging people, whenever I'm at a forum, to come to a consolidation transportation program hearing at Winchester Hall on October 29th at 7 p.m. At that time, Transportation Secretary Beverly Swayam Staley and State Highway Administrator Neil Peterson will be there to hear our local concerns about our transportation issues. I think we need to come together as a community with our elected leaders, and we need to fill that room that night. We need to all come in and we need to tell them we have public safety concerns on Route 15 and we want them addressed now. And the first thing we need to do is get funding for that access road. And then we need to talk about slowing down the traffic. We've been speeding down that road, and people from Pennsylvania, 55% of the traffic on Route 15 in that area comes from Pennsylvania. We're speeding down that road and we need to slow down. And I know that I use that Hayward Road intersection myself, and it's like taking your life in your hands. So let's all come together on October 29th and please come and testify and be there in the room to tell them we want this problem fixed now.
Mr. Smith?
I want to mention about 4 different traffic projects that need to proceed. The city recently broke ground on the center section of the Monocacy Boulevard. This will allow not only economic development there, which we have been looking forward to for some time, but it will be kind of an escape route. Until now, there has not been an eastern way to get around the city. That'll be a big help. The Monocacy Boulevard interchange that has been spoken of, the city and county are on the same page for that and are proceeding to fund it and are hoping to get the state to make it a priority in funding, hopefully before some of the construction that is planned down the road in Montgomery County. That is very important. That will allow us to shut down Hayward Road, which is a safety problem. Now is the time for us to voice our opinion that the 3 bridges, Patrick Street, 7th Street, and Rosemont Avenue, should be priorities on the entire multimodal study that extends from Montgomery County to Frederick, because when these streets are widened, they will allow us to have some relief in our congestion in that part of the city.
Mr. O'Connor.
This is one of those areas where, in the previous question, we talked about intergovernmental cooperation. I think Carol hit the nail on the head. There has to be a united voice, and recently the city and the county both held public hearings on the multimodal study, and you could see that even there, the city and the county had different priorities about the way our transportation issues need to be addressed. Several aldermen at that time talked about the need to, yes, it's a long-term strategy, but to pursue some kind of a mass transit option. I think this is where we need to look at as we develop the new properties that come into the city, and as we look at the infill and redevelopment potential, that we look at how we make our neighborhoods more sustainable, how we can reduce the impact on automobiles to get around the city. This is a great community to live and to work in. We need to make it easier for people to do that without having to get in their cars to go from one side of town to the other. There are options that we can look at in terms of our new development to make them more bicycle and pedestrian friendly, and to create the kind of an environment that really creates sustainable development and improves in the near term the quality of life of the citizens currently here.
Ms. Russell.
I agree that we need to start looking at some alternative ways to transport ourselves around the city. And of course, this is all, visionary, but I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he said, when we're looking at an annexation now, and we're talking about building these giant R&D campuses and so forth, and building housing so folks can live where they work, why don't we start talking about perhaps starting the first leg of a light rail system? And when a new development comes in, work that into the master plan. And so as we start building new development like that, we can start connecting and building these pieces of infrastructure. So that's, something optional. But the city just, if I'm not mistaken, approved sending a letter to the State Highway Administration asking for a safety study of Route 15, which clearly is an unsafe road for many reasons. And so they're asking for some immediate relief, and I obviously would support that.
Mr. Imhoff.
I would love to solve US 15 tomorrow. I know that it's going to be a 10, maybe 20-year process with the state government, even with cooperation with the county and the city going together in the same way. It's just the way things are. In the interim, what the city needs to do is concentrate on the projects that we've already started, from Monocacy Boulevard, Christopher's Crossing, Schifferstadt Boulevard, and all the roads that we can control, where we have expended the funds to go build those roads now. It will probably take about 5 years to get them all built, but in the meantime, it can help distribute some of that traffic that will be coming for all those new jobs from Fort Detrick and other places around the city. Will it solve 15? No. But it will solve the ability for our citizens to get around the city better. Thank you.
Donna Kazanchek.
As people were talking, I realized that you're all talking about planning, and planning for the future is the most important issue. I did back the mass transit option, Monocacy Boulevard, Christopher's Crossing, excuse me, I've backed all of those. Another thing I've backed is when you plan a new neighborhood, you need a grid system going through that neighborhood instead of a bunch of cul-de-sacs. Cul-de-sacs are lovely to live on, but they are very difficult. They make it very difficult to get through neighborhoods. So planning is key here when we're talking about traffic issues.
Mrs. Hadaway.
We can't build ourselves out of the traffic problem. What happens when you add a lane to a highway is at first the traffic problem is better, but over time the traffic problem just expands into that additional lane and your bottleneck just becomes wider. So instead, we need to figure out better ways to deal with traffic. Most of the traffic complaints that I hear are from people who are workforce commuters. About 40% of the citizens in the city commute down the road for jobs outside of the city. We need to figure out ways to get more jobs in our city. Furthermore, we need to work with companies and incentivize them to consider options such as teleworking. There's a company called SRA International that I used to work for, and I'm very proud of the fact that they just opened an office here in Frederick.